So I'm going to be discussing in this video a problem for reliabilism. I call it a problem and not an objection because it's different than the sort of objection we saw in the last video for evidentialism. In that was an objection in a sense because it said, here's a case, evidentialism says this, but intuitively that's the wrong answer, so it looks like a problem for evidentialism. This is not the nature of the problem I'll present. The problem here is a problem for even understanding how to work out the reliabilist picture, how to even understand what it says about particular cases. And so often this goes by the name the reference class problem. So in general, we can ask about, we can characterize the problem in terms of the following question. What specifically should we focus on when thinking about a belief forming process? How do we divide these processes up? Because there are multiple ways of describing such a process. And some will be reliable, but others won't be. That's the problem explained in big detail. If we don't know how to sort of cut up the process or describe it, we're not going to be able to tell if it's reliable or not. And so according to the reliabilist, we won't be able to tell whether or not the belief is justified. There might be no good answer. And so it's helpful, I think, to really see this problem, to think about a particular example to get some hold on it. So imagine your sister told you that your mom will be home late tonight, and you form the belief that mom will be home late tonight. Okay, so far so good, looks pretty good. Now, we want to know whether that's justified for the reliabilist. And what that means is we want to know whether the process by which you came to believe it, the process by which it was formed, is a reliable belief forming process. Well, what is that process? What's the right way to describe the process by which you form that belief? Well, that's what we want to know. But there are a bunch of options, it seems like. One is, well, you formed it by hearing it from another person, by testimony. You form your belief by hearing what another person said, testimony. That looks like a pretty good way of thinking about it. But it's also true that you formed it through testimony from someone who often lies to you. Your sister, is a liar when she talks to you sometimes. You got it from testimony from a family member. That's another correct description of the process by which you acquired the belief. She plays soccer, so you got it from testimony from a soccer player, et cetera, et cetera. It seems like there are an infinite number of ways we can describe this process by which you form the belief. And some of these descriptions of processes are going to be reliable while others won't be. So we might think that testimony from another person in general is pretty reliable. Not fully reliable, but pretty reliable. And so we might think you're pretty justified. But then when we consider that the testimony is from someone who often lies to you, as your sister does, since you have a rivalry, then we think, well, maybe that's not such a reliable process. So maybe you're not justified. But what about from a soccer player? Maybe soccer players are generally reliable, so maybe it is justified. Until we can focus on one particular description of the process, we're not going to be able to even know what the prediction is about whether this belief is justified or not. And so reliabilism really has this problem in stating the theory. What processes should we be focusing on? Goldman often talks about general processes in general, things like testimony, memory, perception. But why privilege those processes, we might want to know, rather than finer-grained descriptions, which might actually be more informative. For instance, like testimony from someone who often lies to you. This is a question I think we can talk more about when we get together for our discussion.